to Fahrenheit.
All right. Well, welcome to another episode of Federo Speaks, where we will be discussing yet again another week of a conversation that is very important to our community, to our society, to our country, and to the world at large. And that is the topic of suicide by way of mental health and so forth. I am excited to have two very, very special guests to be joining this conversation, and that is that of Delisha Reese. She will be introducing herself as well as co-facilitating the conversation. She was a part of the women's conversation on suicide, and she facilitated and did an amazing job. So we invited her back on the show to also co-facilitate this conversation on suicide and family in America. In addition, we have Danyelle White, the beautiful Danyelle White, who will be joining the conversation. We welcome her. She's going to introduce herself as well. And so I really want to just start off by just kind of stating why I believe this is an important conversation. As I stated on the previous conversations, I myself have struggled with mental health, particularly throughout the pandemic, somewhere around the September-October period, which was a critical turning point for me as it relates to me realizing how important mental health is. I struggle with suicidal ideation for a period of time that really had me scared for myself and a fearing for, just the danger of what I could possibly do to harm myself. And I began to do a very deep introspective walk out of that process, which I know a lot of people aren't aware of how to pull themselves out of that state of depression, anxiety, mental stress, that low point when you're at the dark point. But I was able to do so, thankfully, and it was a conversation that I heard Oprah have with Meghan Markle and the royal family, and Meghan was stating how she was suicidal and despaired of her life as well as that of her unborn child, which made me realize that suicide those thoughts weren't an isolated event that I suffered from. It's not an isolated occurrence within our community, but it's something that is globally affecting the world and globally affecting different sections of our community, particularly the men, who are 3.5 times more likely to be successful at committing suicide, the women, who are 7 times more likely to think about suicide regularly, the youth, who have experienced a 60% increase in suicidal rates from the time of 2007 to 2018, as well as our family as a whole. I think it's very important that we discuss this topic from the perspective of the family, to give an insight to how we can better support other family members who may be struggling with suicidal thoughts or mental health issues, as well as determine some of the generational causes that result in mental health issues. So that is the purpose, and one of the goals of this conversation is just to really open up the conversation from the realm of taboo and unspoken thing that we don't really delve into, but to bring it to the forefront of our minds, our conversations. Due to the pandemic, we haven't gotten the exact rates yet, but they are saying that suicide has dramatically increased amongst all demographics. And it's important that I believe we begin to be brave enough to have the conversation about this. So with that said, I am going to introduce to you guys our facilitator for the day. Her name is Delisha Reese. I'm not gonna say too much about her. I'll have her introduce herself, but she is Delisha Reese. She is a very dear person to me, a member of our the Paint the World Project executive board, very powerful woman of God, as well as just a powerful woman in and of herself. So with that said, I want to introduce you guys to Delisha Reese. Welcome, Delisha Reese.
Thank you, Fidel. As he stated, my name is Delisha Reese. I'm part of the board, and I did facilitate the conversation with the women on suicide. And I took away a lot from it. It was rich. Everyone expressed themselves and their trueness, and it was just a blessing to be a part of it. So I appreciate that I've been, able to participate on these panels, and it benefited me, and even it benefited the people who I sent the YouTube link to. They said it was very informative and a lot of information that they didn't really realize or understand or know that goes on with dealing with suicide. So
awesome. Yes, I've gotten that feedback as well. So I'm really, really excited to continue the conversation. So thank you for the introduction. Next up, we have Danyelle White. Welcome, Danyelle.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Will you introduce yourself?
Okay. There's just not a lot, I guess. Other than the fact that I definitely have a passion for educating people on mental health. I do, I don't know, I guess beyond that, I don't really have much else that I want to share about me personally, I guess, at this point.
Okay. Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing what you share. I'll share this. She's also our newest executive board member, so I welcome you, executive, to this conversation. With that said, I want to just give a quick disclaimer for the conversation, and that is the information presented in this conversation may be triggering to some. If you are having suicidal thoughts, please contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 for support and assistance from a trained counselor. If you or a loved one is in immediate danger, please call 911. With that said, we're going to toss the mic back over to the lovely Delisha Reese to begin the facilitation of the conversation.
All right, I appreciate you. Since we only have a few people on today, the three of us thus far, if people are watching, I did have a welcome statement that I wanted to share. So if you're watching, welcome. And if you're viewing this, welcome again. My goal for being on and participating in this panel today is to see, listen, support, and validate what each person has to say about the family dynamic when it comes to addressing the topic of suicide. I'm here today to express myself as a Black woman who supports and prays for the Black community. And I hope that you will feel free to do the same when you view this or see this. I'm not here to belittle, disrespect, cut down, or demean my Black community today. I am here to lend my voice, opinion, support, and love to each person that has decided to freely participate in this emotional but real topic of suicide. It hasn't been easy for any of us, but we've made it, we've persevered, and we've experienced the victory that comes along with us allowing God's will to be done in us, through us, and around us. So I pray that the love, support, and admiration that you experience on the panel today will propel you to see God in yourself, your home, and your community. I hope that you will live each day full of purpose, hope, love, joy, and peace, because I've learned that you can't relive or get that day back once it's gone. So with that being said, the first topic and that we have on the statistics that we have is to discuss how suicide and mental health issues often coexist in a family structure or environment. And as we've done before, I want to give the statistics on that because I want us to really understand that the numbers are very jarring and they're very high in us dealing with the family suicide issue and mental issues to coexist. First of all, 46% of people who die by suicide have a known mental health condition. And when I looked up mental health illnesses, they can stem from anxiety, depression, eating disorders. There are so many different varieties that people really don't understand that mental health can branch out to and can exist in. And the next statistics is 5% of adults 18 or older experience a mental illness in a year, equivalent to 43.8 million people. 6 million youth in America, ages 13 to 17 years have been diagnosed with a mental disorder. So I want to put the question out. The first question was, has anyone in your family circle committed suicide or admitted to having strong suicidal thoughts or due to mental illness? And I'll start with Danyelle. Do you mind answering that question or giving your input on that?
I personally struggle. Again, that's why I'm here. As far as, personally, I guess I have issues with medication. It's more of a medical thing. I mean, most people, not just Black people, have scars and wounds from the past and, family issues and things like that. I guess the point I think that a lot of people don't understand within family is the support actually that's needed to help, get people through those things. And a lot of family, unfortunately, makes it worse, in their ignorance, perhaps, or just inability, I guess, to relate or even acknowledge, their own wounds and things like that we sometimes transfer on to others. Mm-hmm. The very interesting thing that I found as I've been just doing research and trying to help rehabilitate myself was Ernest Hemingway, who is ironically from Oak Park, Illinois. Not only struggled with traumatic brain injuries, which I think a lot of us don't understand how easily we can suffer a traumatic brain injury. He also struggled with hemochromatosis, which I ironically found out is in my family as well. So it's very deep. And it's certainly not anything that's laughable, by any means. It's not a low income thing. There's lots of, he was a Nobel Prize winner,
Yes.
But, I think the fact that so many people are being left to feel as though they need to fend for themselves and, or they can't share because people will laugh or not understand, or, I guess for me, it's a fraternity, sorority, or a member, family that I really don't want to be a part of. I don't want to be an individual who struggles with suicidal ideation. But again, it's not just situational. This is something, because there's medications that are known to give people that as a side effect, unfortunately. And a lot of those medications are medications that I pretty much have to take for the remainder of my life. So it's very, it's a very emotional subject for me.
Appreciate that answer. And I definitely understand I understand because recently My husband just had a little nerve damage and pain, and they gave him a medication, and the medication had uh, 10 to 15, maybe even 20 side effects. But the number one side effect that they had on the list of medication was suicidal thoughts. They're giving you a medication for your nerves, but a side effect is suicidal thoughts, anger, outbursts. I'm like, this is unheard of, and we don't see that, we don't address it. And just for your experience with it, it's like I never knew that was a point. I always thought it was just specifically for something, you dealing with mental illness. So I truly understand what you're saying about the medication aspect, because it is, because most people who deal with mental illness, they antidepressants, medication for bipolarness, So I do understand that aspect of it. And that was a very good point that you brought out. And I do want to welcome, is Jerves to the.
Sorry. Yes. Hi, everybody.
I would like to welcome you to the conversation. Thank you for joining. And our question, I'll throw it to you since you just recently joined. The question was, has anyone in your family circle committed suicide or admitted to having strong suicidal ideations due to mental illness?
Yes. In my family, my brother, he has, and at one point we did have to hospitalize him. He's younger, he's in his 20s. They did prescribe medication, but talking to him and then to other peers and other friends, realizing that, like you said, with the medication, it made him more depressed and more sad and feeling like life wasn't worth living too. So sometimes our younger generation, and I'm not even gonna say younger because I'm young too, I'm 30, they look into other things besides medication, like smoking weed or other natural things that our society would think is a terrible thing, and it's not always that bad. I mean, yes, no, we don't want you just walking around smoking weed, but some things you need to help cope with those feelings, those mental. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the word off the top of my head. With those mental, it's not an illness, but to deal with that mental pressure that you're having, and sometimes it's not a Black thing, but it's a society thing. We need to look and not judge some of our young people and family members for the things that they do. I'm not saying you go out there and you just go smoke a whole bunch of weed or you just go drink. What I'm saying is some things people use to help them cope that are natural, that medication has these side effects that will cause more depression or cause suicidal thoughts, that sometimes you have to look at the research and the pros and the cons.
Yes. And Federo.
Can I add to that? Yeah, that's a very good point, Jerves. Because I discovered marijuana as a great agent for just relaxing my nerves. I live a very stressful life in terms of having multiple pots boiling at once, and my phone could be ringing at any given moment, and especially during the pandemic, I'm gonna be really honest, I hope no job is looking at this, but marijuana really helped me get through that period. I also discovered the natural benefits of shrooms and how shrooms have an ability to help you clear out a lot of those negative fogs of emotion. And unfortunately, our government has called these things illegal in order to control, the manufacturing and how it's a money game. If you can't make money, and if we can't have And lo and behold, they do not want you to have a clear thought. They're not going to give you the benefit of needing no medicine and needing not a doctor and needing not another pill. There are some very natural ways that the earth has provided for us to be able to deal with some of our mental illnesses. And historically, our ancestors knew this. Before the 70s, before the 60s, marijuana and shrooms were not illegal. People were able to, participate and at their own leisure. It wasn't until, I'm gonna say this to shut up, it wasn't until the 70s and the hippies and they came around and said, yo, the government is jacked.
Right.
And we gonna sit out, we ain't paying no taxes, and we about to sit and smoke weed and love on each other. The government said no. All right, we're gonna illegalize all of that. Y'all get up and get a job and come participate in the system, because people were anti-government, became very anti-government as it relates to when they got their minds cleared. You could see, I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna shut up. I take shrooms, and shrooms will enlighten your mind. It'll take away all of those negative emotions. Now, I'm not condoning drug usage or anything like that. These are natural herbs that the earth provide. I ain't saying go do no cocoa or nothing like that. These are not, and like to Jerves' point, if you do your research scientifically, doctors are saying, yes, these are beneficial. Yes, it's the government that's saying, no, we haven't found a way to monetize it yet. So to your point, I wouldn't judge anyone. And I'm learning myself, because when I was first introduced to shrooms, I was like, what? You want me? What? I really thought the person who was introducing me was trying to put me on to something.
Right.
It wasn't until I did my own research and said, let me give it a shot, and realized, okay, there's a trick to this. So yes, I would say that. I would shut up. Thank you.
It's hard, right? It's hard not to go past that and understand the things that the actual government did put out there to say and make different drugs and make different things and make different communities illegal and selling it. But now it's a $1 billion industry where it's medicinal, and you could just go to any doctor, they sign a prescription, and it's okay, it's all right. But like you said, Federo, doctors have been prescribing marijuana to cancer patients, anxiety patients, depression. It's everything that's under a mental illness. They have been assigning different chemicals, and I watched a documentary over in Europe and everything. They have these labs that literally create different things for medicinal uses, where they're taking everything. But the United States is so against everything, and with the FDA and all the rules and regulations of that, instead of being concerned about healing the people, instead of being concerned about the people getting healed and not having to go through these cycles of medication and all this other stuff, it's a money business, but it's not about the people business. So that's why I'm glad that we're on here to have conversation. Because that's what we're trying to do, have conversation to say, oh, you've experienced that, you've experienced that. Wow, I've experienced that too. And how often do we experience it, but yet we don't express it to each other or share it with each other, that's what we've experienced or that's what we've seen. Specifically, even in our, like you, Danyelle and Jerves said, in our own families. Sometimes it's not talked about. My nephew, and I'm gonna get off of it too. My nephew is bipolar, and he didn't want to take the medication because it slowed him down. He didn't feel like himself. And he was like, I have 5 kids to take care of and look after. They're under 5 years old. And when I'm on this medication, I'm not aware of what's going on with them. And if one of them get hurt, I can't live with that. So he didn't want to take the medication because he didn't feel himself, but he needed to in order to balance his hormones and what was going on in his body. So, like I said, mental health is something that it really needs to be talked about more. More information needs to be looked at, discovered, researched, and really have a if it can even be a holistic view on it, you know? So the second question was, and we kind of already answered that, but the one question I do want to ask you guys is, how did your family support you when you were going through this experience? And specifically, Danyelle, I want to call on you first, because I know that you've stated that you've had these experiences. And did you find help within your family?
No, unfortunately, no.
Okay. And just in being a person, I find that sad, because we didn't know how to help my nephew. They hid it and didn't tell us for a long time until he came to live with my mother. And it was just a couple of outbursts. And then all of a sudden his mother was like, oh yeah, well, he's bipolar.
But for me anyway, I mean, the fact that you want to take your life is not something that you would just go broadcasting, or that you've even thought about it, because people are already going to look at you a certain kind of way, as if we aren't, kind of sizing people up and looking at people and coming to our own conclusions about people anyway. So it's like and I guess I will say that I did share with my mom, you know, some things, and a lot of things that I share with her, she was like, I really don't even know if I would share that,
Right.
and I get where she came from, because people are cruel and judgmental and, opinionated. And when you're going through something, those things don't help. you know
Right.
um I was diagnosed with MS, and that, I mean, to be told that you have something that medicine says there's no cure for, that you just gonna have to live with it, and then your prognosis, they can't even tell you, well, this will happen and this will happen and this will happen, because they don't know. So it's like you're already living in one of the most anxious states that you'll probably ever be in anyway, because you don't know what the future holds. And most rational people try to plan their futures. They do try to go to school and do well and get married and have a family and a career and, the American dream. And then when you have something that happens that sweeps that rug from under you, especially, I mean, I think I could have almost understood if I got cancer, if I was a smoker, or, something like that. MS, what, I don't really quite understand what I did to get that. You know what I mean? So it's like you're already trying to work some things within yourself. And again, when you have people, who haven't walked it, because there are some things that I truly believe people won't understand until they have to stand in it themselves, you know. And so I think when you're going through that, it's very important that you be more selective in who you have kind of in your close circle. So I didn't really speak to my family as much about it, because of some of the things that I was hearing. It's like, okay, some of this isn't necessarily even, the most godly counsel. So, I did press in more spiritually. I did seek therapy. Fortunately, I had a great employee employee assistance counselor, that gave me information about the American Medical Association and a publication that they offer called JAMA. So I've been able to really educate myself, so that I understand what my triggers are, so that I, know down health wise, what medications, I can maybe substitute even for diet. So, I've been exploring more of the holistic ways of, I guess, kind of treating it. Some medications, like say for birth control, a marijuana or something like that, you can't replace it. So I get where, those, and definitely my doctors have, expressed that to me, as well, that is an option. But there are some other medications that those types of medications unfortunately don't replace. So it's like you still have to kind of find that balance, I guess.
Yes. And I just want to just clarify a little bit too. Since we're talking about family suicide, for me, in my opinion, it wasn't the fact that they were shameful. My experience with his mother was, I've dealt with it for so long, so now y'all can deal with it. Because my brother is his father. So her disconnect with him is like, well, you can get it now and take care of it. And so once again, in the family structure, you never told us because you dealt with it and everything. You didn't give us the opportunity to even understand or know what it was for us to even participate in helping you, but you did it out of spite and you did it out of anger to say, I'll just hand them over to you now and let you discover it on your own. And the thing that I was so surprised with is when we did call to ask, have you experienced this with him? Does he act like this all the time? Just asking just general questions. That's when the backlash came and said, oh yeah, I have, so you can handle it now. So that's another aspect to me in the family when it's dealt with in that manner.
And that's where the therapy comes in. And I had shared this before. There is an organization called the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance. There's also the National Association of Mental Illness. There's lots of organizations that actually offer support groups for family members because it is very difficult. I would recommend that, not only does the individual need therapy, the family, and a lot of the times, again, I mean, with family, because we are all people, and it's so easy to say they, and not take that introspective look and kind of figure out the areas where you could, use some help and maybe be a bit more empathetic. So it's not only supporting, we're supposed to love each other as we love ourselves. And so I think, it's unfortunately, I guess, that you experienced that, but I guess know that there are resources and support groups and systems out there to help your loved one. Because I think if we get to a point where we're all just throwing up our hands, we already kind of see what the world is like now, just with the violence, the problems with the people not being able to better regulate their emotions and, understand that it's okay to not like something, or someone, I think, that matter. But we do need to be more mindful in how we handle people.
Yes. And Jerves, since you said your brother had that issue within the family, how did you guys tackle it, or did you have resources to even understand how to tackle it?
Well, my mother's sitting here next to me, so I'm gonna chime her in because she knows more. I was there, but she knows more. Okay. So I'm gonna put her on. Her name is Priscilla.
Okay, Priscilla. Welcome, Priscilla.
She's beautiful. I love your hair.
Thank you. Well, you know what? To be honest, I knew a little bit about my son since he was in grade school. When he was very active in sports. When he became maybe like 6th grade, he started to be this child that pretty much stayed in the house. He didn't interact with a lot of people. He played games, the video games, but he wasn't addicted to it. It was like he just felt like he couldn't go places. And I never understood why. I did a lot of things with him. I equated at first to his father not being in his life. And you know how you go through that struggle and you try to find a mentor for him, but he had
Oh yes.
but he wrestled. He played football since he was 6 years old. So he had all of these men mentoring him, and I couldn't figure out what it was. So for a while, I did what everybody else does. I kind of ignored it. I just went on with life, did what I was supposed to do for him, but I never really spoke to him about his issues. And then he went on for a while, and he got out and started dating. He went away to college for about a year and decided he didn't want to do that. And I told him that was fine. He wanted to move in an apartment. He moved in an apartment with a girl that he met. I mean, I'm sorry I'm going so deep, but
it's okay.
She was very stable. She was very hardworking. And I've always learned through my mother that through our sons, no matter how we feel about a female, we treat them with respect. So I actually got to know her, and she was the one that came to me and started just calling me. And I did a lot of things for her. And I told her to call me anytime she needed me. And she started calling me, not necessarily saying my son was physically abusive to her, but it was mental. She didn't call it that, but I called it that because it was just out of control. So she called me eventually. You know, I worked with her. I worked with him to talk to him without involving other people at first. And then one day she called me and she said, I'm leaving. I'm just moving out. They were in Naperville. So I said, okay, you know, you have to do what you have to do. I still love you, and I will take it from here. For a while, I thought he was getting a little bit better because he was by himself. He was trying to get himself together. But then he moves another chick in. So this chick, I just couldn't do her. She knew too. One day she called me, or she called my family because she couldn't really connect with me. I went out to where he was living. My goodness, he was in a condo. It looked like it was just abandoned. Like it was so much food, wrappers, papers, things. Me and Jerves had to go out there. My sister also. I had to stop worrying about what other people thought, whether they were my family. I'm not anymore, but during the COVID, I resigned. But I was a Chicago public school teacher. You know, people make you think, well, you can't tell people things. And look, I had to just tell my family the truth because I couldn't help him. I got him from out of that condo. I cleaned it up. We got everything together. And I'm gonna tell you what I did. I took him to the doctor to get checked out, and I checked him in Christ. I checked him into the mental hospital. It killed me because when I went there to visit, it was nothing but young people in this place. And I don't mean just Black, Hispanic, white. And they were all between the ages of maybe 17, 18 to maybe 27, just in this place. And I had to just go to counseling with him. I had to take off time from work, go with him to counseling. I didn't move him back into my house per se, but my sister lives near, and I had him move in with her so we could all talk to him, work with him, do things with him. And I'm gonna tell you something. I'm not really sure about how this panel is set up, but God has done a lot of restoration in my family.
Amen.
And I had to get all of my children together. And I had to tell them, my mother passed away in the summer, and she was the one that enabled him, enabled Jerves, even though Jerves doesn't have a lot of issues in this area per se, but she would enable him. Every time something went wrong, she went and fixed it. And you know, she was the person covering us, but she had her own issues. I had to just tear that wall down and bring my children together and tell them that they had to be supportive to each other, because when something happens to me, they have to be able to help each other, not say, well, she's gone now, so what do we do? I mean, we've been through so many things. He told me that he couldn't take the medication, the things it was doing to him. He would rather smoke. At first, I was against the smoking. I went on nagging him about the smoke. And then let me tell you something, after the mental institution thing, I was like, baby, smoke the weed. He moved to Arizona. His job promoted him there. Amazon, he does programming. I mean, it's like his life kind of just changed. And he just told me, and instead of nagging, I just pray for him. I pray for his mind. I pray for, I just pray for him in general to be able to hold on through all of this and find life. We didn't per se find organizations at the time we could work with, but I did work with Christ. We did go to counseling together. I did my own counseling. And then when he came here, he went to that counseling with me. We just started rebuilding some of our relationships that kind of supported him without judging him, because guess what? I don't care what these other people out here think. I need my son to have his mind. I need him to be able to live a good life. So I had to stop worrying about what everybody else out here thought, even some of my family members. Know what you know. So what? What can you do? You know, I'm not gonna fuss with you about it. I'm just going to help him through it. And all of my people that helped me help him, I appreciate them.
Yes.
I just appreciate them.
Yeah.
You know, but
well, you after that, we can almost get off, because everything that we have on this survey, whether it be statistics or questions or experience, you have just answered everything. And we appreciate that you will be willing to come on and even participate with your daughter and say, hey, this is my experience. And it was just a wealth of knowledge just to listen to you. And I applaud you for being willing to come on here today and share that amazing story about your son. It did my heart good. It touched me.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Nice meeting you guys.
Thank you.
Likewise. Hopefully this won't be the last time we see you, Mama. I need some more of that Mama wit right there. I heard it in there.
Yes,
this won't be the last time. Sometimes
all right.
I'm in the background just listening, but I've just been really it was very interesting to me just to hear Jerves talk about it, because actually I told her, I said, just try. I said, talk to him and see if he will come on himself and, you know, and share his story. And so far he told her, oh, well, I'll think about it and I'll let you know. So I'm going to kind of work on him so that he can participate, because this will be good for him, you know.
Yes.
Share some things with other people, you know, it'll help him heal.
Yes.
Awesome. Yes,
all right.
definitely. He's definitely invited.
Regular therapy though? Has he done like a smaller group therapy?
He did small group therapy, and we did family therapy.
Yeah.
So we did both.
You know, I mean, I guess, you know, that you know, because our family usually loves us, you know, despite our flaws, you know, I think that willingness to kind of step out in front of a more public audience where you can be quote unquote trolled and, you know, those things, and it's hard. So I would just say, you know, thank God that he has a mother like you that has been able to stand in the gap for him and be there, you know, and you know, do those things to help get him back on the right path. But you know, just continue to nurture him and understand that I think the biggest thing that I hear that just really kind of rubs me the wrong way is when people mention a mother being too like babying or nurturing, you know, because it's like this world will eat them up and spit them out without even a second thought. And so when you can't go home, you know, when you can't, you know, cry on the shoulders of the people who are supposed to love you, it does make, you know, the world seem like a much smaller place. And I can see, you know, unfortunately, where people feel like, hey, you know what, I don't matter, you know, nobody cares, you know. So it's really a blessing to hear that testimony. Unfortunately, it wasn't mine, but you know, I would have to say mine was a bit more spiritual, you know, definitely therapy, prayer, you know, and meditation, you know, has been a bit of my saving grace, I guess I'll say.
Awesome.
Derry has something to say?
Well, first I wanted to welcome the beautiful Tamara Walton to the call. Hey, Tamara, how are you? I think for me personally, and I not to belabor the point too much, for me personally, be it that my mother is deceased, and when I really hit uh, that, like what I would call one of my lowest points, um, just that loneliness of missing her was a point of contention, you know. The fact that when I looked up, it was like, where can I go where I can find the support, where I could just lay and drop all of this down and be and let the little boy out that's inside of me, where I don't have to continue to be the big strong man for the world and for all of the women in my life and all the people that are dependent upon me. Um, Unfortunately, like I said, my mother is deceased, but what I was able to find when I really reached that point in life was a strong support system amongst my friends, amongst my family, my close family. I'm here in LA. So when I hit my dark point, I jumped on a plane and came home. I was grateful to have some sort of home to come to, be it that I gave up my place, um, and I was able to just come home and be amongst my family, speak the language with the people that understand me, tell the same jokes, eat some family food to really bring me back to myself and to also remind me that I wasn't alone and I didn't
Yes.
have to deal with what I was dealing with and the life that people say is your life, but sometimes life can hit you with some stuff that's hard, even hard for you to carry as a man, as a woman, as a mother, as a father, and so forth. And so I'm so grateful because, like I said, I was able to come home, able to recalibrate, able to be loved on, able to have someone care for me, able to just sleep and rest. And it did a lot just for that reset that I needed to be able to come back to myself. And so I encourage anybody that's watching, that's going through this, anything that's similar to what we've discussed, to see if you can find someone that loves you enough to lay that down for a moment, to free you from the thoughts, the pressure, whatever that pressure is that is saying, that is causing you to despair of life and saying, hey, this is too much. You need to get out. Find someone where that cares for you, where you can just release that. Not to say that you won't have to come back and deal with it from a healthy perspective, but you cannot deal with it if you're in an unhealthy state of mind. You cannot, and you cannot deal with it if it's too heavy for you to carry. And I think as men, as mothers, as single parents, we tend to take on these huge loads that I don't think we were ever intended to carry alone. Be it that God gave us a world full of people, community. He almost requires that we get along and that we share each other's burdens. The scripture says, love thy neighbor as thyself, to the very same degree that you love yourself. Meaning, if you're willing to wipe your dirty behind, be willing to do that for your neighbor. Now, how many people can say, hey, I'm willing to go and my neighbor house, if they were sick and needed somebody to wash their dirty behind, then I'm willing to do that. But that is the degree that God requires and encourages us to be in fellowship and in relationship. So to feel alone in a world where there's a lot of people and there are people that care, whether or not you're blood or not. If Delisha, you don't mind me mentioning this, during my dark period, Delisha was a lifeline to me. Delisha, and she not my blood, but I was able to come and say, sis, what is going on? Can you pray with me? I don't know. She'll tell you her own in her own words just what that peer, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what help I need. I don't know where to get it. I don't know. And just to have someone to pray for me, to say, hey, bro, if you make it to Chicago, I'm coming to get you. Came and got me, took me to the airport, was there. And I didn't have to pay anything. It was nothing required. And it did a world of good for me, as a man, personally, as a brother. It was just all weighing down. So I encourage you, I said all that to say, I encourage you not to go through these periods alone. Reach out. To Danyelle's point, there are centers, there are facilities and organizations that are designed and set up to provide a shoulder if you need a shoulder and ear. There are hotlines, there are resources. So don't break out of the isolation as much as you can. Kill the isolation. I think very rarely, I'll say this to shut up, very rarely do anybody kill themselves in front of somebody. Very rarely does anybody commit suicide in the presence of another person. It's usually in isolation, where we're despairing of life and there's nobody there to talk us off the cliff, to talk the gun out of our hand, that we usually give up the ghost. So I'll say thank you guys for sharing that. We'll shut up.
Thank you. Tamara, would you mind, do you have anything you would like to share about that point? Or did you hear the question at all?
I'm sorry, I did not hear the question.
Okay, so the question was, has anyone in your family circle committed suicide or admitted to having strong suicidal ideations due to mental illness?
I would say I can piggyback on a situation that I dealt with my son. Not that he had suicidal thoughts, but great depression there. He lost his right eye when he was 2 years old, due to a rare cancer. So his struggle was very, very different in school. We know that as Danyelle was saying, you get trolled, talked about. It was very, very hard for him to go through school with his disability. And I dealt with having to deal with a lot of emotional baggage from me personally, and also having to deal with trying to pick him up and help him develop as a young man, as a child, as a growing adult. And I would say it was a lot of depression that he experienced through that time. And with that depression, there was definitely struggles there. There was some times where I was really hurt for him. That it was some times where we had to speak to counselors, friends, family, just everybody as a whole had to come together and just try to assist and help him in his trials and tribulations that he was going through, with trying to find himself and know that he was still handsome and smart and all the great abilities that he had as a young man. So yes, I wouldn't say he was suicidal, but that depression almost feels suicidal. You know, the depression is real.
Does.
You know, you don't know where to turn to. You have darkness. You're dealing with a lot of demons. You really have to pray it off. You really have to be able to have mental clarity, mental strength, mental stability, mental health. And that is what I decided to really tackle. You know, his mental health, his emotional health, just letting him know that he was loved, letting him know that we loved him, you know, and it will be okay. And through it all, that it was definitely a reason for what he was going through. And it's usually a reason for what we all go through. It's usually it's definitely a rainbow that comes after the storm. So it's being spiritual, staying spiritual. I work through it with all spirits. I mean, I would definitely say spiritual guidance was my number one. I would drop to my knees and pray. I would be praying. I would be driving in prayer. I would be everywhere in prayer. Just meditation, prayer, just keep it. And what I found out and what we found out together at the end of that was a change of mind about our situation actually really, really manifested. We had
Mm,
no idea how powerful the mind is in connection with the heart. Those
mm,
are two different brains. And when you put those together in a positive matter and a faith and a belief and a trust in the Most High God, it's so powerful. I had no idea how powerful it was until I started to manifest His strength with just changing my thoughts and stop, changing my worry. Instead of being worried about it, I started to manifest positivity around it. And then it just started to manifest itself in our life.
yes.
um Changing our thoughts about it, changing our situation instead of arguing or instead of listening more, instead of telling him what I felt, listen to what he's feeling and understand his perception also. Who's to say who's wrong? Who's
Yes.
really wrong? Where's the wrong is that it's all about what you perceive it to be.
Yes.
And when I started to just open up more in a positive matter about it and stop worrying so much and just let God lead the way, it manifests.
Yes. 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 He's a mind regulator.
He
He
has
is.
his one eye, but
Yes.
he's when I tell you, you wouldn't even tell. You think he have two because he walk in the room like, hey. He
Yes.
don't wear a
Yes.
patch, he don't wear a glass eye, he doesn't wear anything. He embraces it. That's because he understands that's who he is. He lost his
Yes.
past. He's not a victim of it. He's a survivor.
Yes. Yes.
I
Yes.
like that. That's
I
good
like
stuff.
that too.
That's good
Yes.
stuff. That's good stuff.
Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness. It's almost hard to get off this part of it and go to the second part because it's so rich. But I definitely appreciate all of your answers and just testimonies with it and real life experiences in answering that question because it's a fully loaded question. We could talk about it for a long time. But I do want to try to move on to the next one because this is a very important part of our community as well. I mean, just not our community, but just in general, being a human being is about sexual orientation and gender identity that's connected to suicide. And even if we haven't had the experience ourselves, we honestly have touched someone or know someone, whether it be family or whether it be a friend, just people in general, maybe your workplace, whatever the case may be. This is a very not prevalent. I want to say real thing that we're dealing with in society today. And the thing that I thought was jarring and that was just like big is that the statistics on sexual orientation and gender identity usually was 4 to 6 or possibly even 8 times more that someone dealing with that situation or sexual orientation and understanding that for themselves are more suicidal. And it says that lesbian and gay and bisexual youth are 80% more likely than straight youth to attempt suicide. 80% more likely. The second one was 40% of trans adults have attempted suicide. 61% of trans people who were victims of physical assault have attempted suicide. And the last one, it says lesbian, gay, and bisexual young people who come from families that reject or do not accept them are over 8 times more likely to attempt suicide than those whose families accept them. So the very first question is, have you or anyone in your family circle attempted or committed suicide due to their sexual orientation or gender identity? Did anyone want to answer that question, or do you have an experience to share?
Well, I'll jump in. I'll say personally, now I think I have a very unique perspective on this particular topic. As a bisexual man, I've met both worlds. I have a mind that understands both worlds, and I would tell you that the isolation, going back to the topic of isolation, that those who are um other in terms of orientation other than straight, there's a huge isolation and loneliness and a despair that can come upon you, especially at a young age when you're still developing and learning yourself, and still at a place where you're looking for acceptance, looking for your place in this big crazy world, and to find oftentimes that your little nucleus of a world that you call home, a family, is no longer safe because of something that you cannot control, or something that even if it is, let's take it is as it is a choice. Let's because some people start the it's a choice here, because most parents argue from that perspective when they're trying to find a reason to, ostracize their child. You're choosing this, you're doing this to hurt me. I've heard a lot. And let's assume for a moment that it is a choice. If the person has made the choice, just like you made a choice on your sexuality, why is it that my choice is the one that's wrong, and the one that leads to me being lonely, and being over 8 times more likely to commit suicide because of that loneliness? Why is it that my choice, if we all out here making choices on who we want to be with, and to find that, I would tell you, I don't know anyone specifically to my knowledge that has attempted it based on their sexual orientation, but I will tell you that I know people who are definitely depressed, are definitely lonely, are definitely out here self-medicating, trying to fill a void that their family has left behind due to them being described as an other based on their sexuality. Personally, I took a different road as it relates to my sexual orientation. Because I had been through a lot in my life, I had developed a very tough skin, a very strong mind, that as when I came to the realization, hey, Fedora, you're bisexual. I didn't seek approval from anyone. I didn't feel the need to throw myself a coming out party. I've never seen a straight coming out party, and I'd be damned if I be a part one for me. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's throwing, hey, I'm straight, hallelujah, I figured it out. So I didn't throw myself a parade. What I did was continue to live my life and continue to come to terms with, first, me, and then the role that I intend to play in this world as a bisexual man. And I think that that's healthy. Everybody should have that realization, straight or bi or whatever. Unfortunately, I don't think that we make it that far sometimes into that self-realization where you come to the point where you realize, hey, this is my life. I gotta choose what I'm gonna do. I gotta be happy with me. Some people get stuck at the point of, I need my mama's approval. I
Yes,
need my
yes.
daddy's approval. I need my sister's approval. They don't love me. And that could cause you to shrivel up and feel like nothing in a world full of everybody who's trying to be somebody. It is dangerous to feel like a nobody. And I would tell you, and I'm gonna say this shit up, but I would tell you that if you have a friend, if you have a neighbor, a coworker who is sexually opposite than you, or another, or whatever, love on them people. Let me tell you
Yes.
why. Because them people have more than likely dealt with some struggles that you will never ever truly understand. They have dealt with some internal battles that will probably forever go unspoken. I probably never really break down every time I wrestle with, okay, Fidel, you need to just be straight, or Fidel, you need to just conform. I'll probably never be able to write every time. I struggle with that, but I don't know how many straight people are around. You just need to be the straightest person. That's not a struggle. So like to my point is that you don't know what these people are dealing with mentally, and you can easily throw somebody over the edge with your judgment, with your negative impressions, your negative connotations, and you can be responsible for adding that last grain of salt to the scale that tips it right over.
Yes. Yes. Gervais, you had something?
Well, a lot of what Fidel said, personally, I have, yes, I have my first husband, my son's father, Maddox. He is gay, and he came out of the closet after we had Maddox, but it was little signs that I saw while we were in the college and married, that he was always hiding stuff, but he was always drinking. He got to the point where he would just, sometimes he'd be in the house by himself and he would just drink until he could make himself pass out. And I would call him and be like, because I had Maddox and I was still at Western and he was in St. Louis at the time. And I would call him, I'd be like, I called you 10 times, you didn't answer the phone. What have you been doing? And so he would just take alcohol at first. It started off with alcohol when we were younger. And he would just drink until he could either pass out or until one day he finally just ended his life. Eventually his family made him marry me because he's from a family of pastors. And they didn't approve of him coming out. So we got married, but at that time I still didn't know. It wasn't until we moved to Minnesota where I left my job here in CPS as a teacher, and Maddox and I went to go join him, that he decided, okay, he didn't outright and tell me, but it was little things that he just couldn't hide. Like he would leave emails, he would leave texts, and talking to other men. And then finally I picked up on it and I asked him, and I'm not a judgmental person. I have my own disabilities, my own issues. So when he told me, I was very supportive. I even told him, okay, fine, we get a divorce. We can't pretend for your family just because we're trying to make them happy. You need to be happy too. So we divorced, we split Maddox 50-50. He still couldn't come out to them. And so it was a lot of men, and he started seeing other men and taking other drugs, to the point where it started to hurt Maddox. And my thing was, Maddox and I, we don't care. We love you the way you are, but you have to get help. And he didn't want to get the help. And eventually it just started spiraling. And my son Maddox now, he'll be 10 in 2 weeks. He told his family and took pictures and showed his family. And of course, at that time, Maddox was like 4 or 5. He didn't know any better. And I guess he wanted to let his family know, his mother, his father, his siblings, that this is my dad. I still love him, whatever. It made things worse. So to the point where my ex-husband started to get upset with me. And then when I would send Maddox, he would neglect Maddox because he felt like somebody was trying to get him or out to get him. And so then his mental started to even break down even more and more and more, to the point now where Maddox is 10, he can't see him because his mental is not together because of all of this with not coming out and not telling people the truth. It's just keep digging a deeper hole. And so for me, the children when I worked in Minneapolis, the children that I came across, even at the age of 4th and 5th grade, that would say they were coming out. My thing was always to be honest. Like you said, for there, who cares what other people think? Just be honest and tell people the truth, because you're not just hurting yourself. Now you're starting to hurt other people. And this is something that my 10-year-old son has to live with, because he can't really see his dad, but he wants to see him. But we can't, even when we try, it's more mental health you're making, and more decisions of suicide that could eventually affect our child in the long run. And what if he decides, well, you weren't part of my life because of such and such, maybe I did that. And I mean, it's a lot of things that make that, as society and as families, and even praying to God, that no matter what, we can't judge people, and we need to be supportive. And it doesn't, your suicide and your mental health doesn't just hurt you, it hurts others.
Yes, it does. It hurts the entire family. It hurts everyone. And like Danyelle said earlier, it doesn't just hurt that person, and it doesn't just see it, that person's life really isn't their own. That's why it's called family. And the thing is that it affects everyone. And the thing is that he doesn't understand that he's affecting generations, because he's affecting his son. And what if his son goes on to, have that and carry that environment and that way of thinking, or whatever the case may be. And it's sad to say, but the statistics, he supports that solely. I mean, he's not the only person that is like that. He's not the only person that's dealing with that. And so that's why when we were looking up this information, I was like, that's a lot of people. That's a big percentage. It's close to almost 100% of people that actually deal with that they still look to their families for acceptance. And now he's still dealing with it. 10 years of Maddox's life is gone because he can't deal with that. And it's just detrimental, because he's benefiting, and he's really not being a benefit in his son's life when he could be. And of course that's the way that it does affect people.
True, it's true. And like you said, it's affecting a big population. Like I said, when I was teaching, of the cases out of 5, I would say maybe 4 out of that 5, girls and males, girls, and now, like you said, that's both genders. They're feeling threatening. And so now it's to the point where a lot of them are acting out, and people are labeling them with disabilities that might not even be there, because they're acting out and showing these emotional interactions, and all they need is someone to support them. So I mean, it's a big hole.
Yes, it is.
Something as society we need to work on.
Yes,
we all are different, and we all,
yes.
God loves us regardless.
I definitely agree with what you're saying. Is it Jerves? Jerves. What you're saying, I definitely agree with what you're saying when it comes to supporting each other and making sure that we love each other. That one main thing is when we do have our sexual preferences, that we don't want to come out and face our friends and families about it because of such of a huge judgment. And I in my empath way of thinking, that hurts me, because we have so many of our own skeletons, and we can sit here and judge someone else and say what they should and should not be, and never look ourselves in the mirror about what we should or should not be before we even, bring that to society. And also, we all have feminine and masculine properties. Every last human being.
Yes.
So it confuses me on why, that really hurts me. And then we judge each other, don't understand what we truly are, the spiritual beings that we truly are, what we're really made of. And then we're just out in the ignorance of hurting our population, hurting our people, not connecting, and so I definitely agree. I definitely agree with what you said,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to that judgment and disappointing each other. I'm gonna put myself on mute because I have a crying baby. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. And just to piggyback off this and to complete this portion, and then I'll hand it over to Federo to talk about the other two topics that we have. With my own experience, and I shared this with Federo, one of our friends that we have in common, he's a gay man, and he takes pride in the fact that he's gay. Been in church all my life. Been in church all my life, and seen it, grew up with it in my own church, and it was just like, oh, pick out, oh, he's gay, he's this and that. But my own opinion of it up until about, I would say 4 years ago, was, oh, it's a sin, you going to hell, it's abomination, and all this other kind of stuff. And when I became friends with this gentleman, young man, the Holy Spirit almost kind of spanked me. And he said, what is sin? Is there a degree of sin that you see? Is there a degree? If someone murders someone, is that sin? Is that greater than him being gay? He said, what I've asked you to do simply is love on him. Love on him. Not look at him as a gay man. Look at him as a human being. Because I love him, and so should you. Because again, I have no heaven or hell to put him in or take him out of. I just don't. But the thing is that unknowingly, we twist and have ideas in our head and things that we think that constitute us judging someone and saying, you're an abomination. But God doesn't tell any of us that we're an abomination, no matter what we do, say, how we are being, or whatever the case may be. So my thing is that it's almost self-revelation and manifestation in what God helps and allows you to really understand, because a lot of times we're pointing the finger and don't even know why we're pointing the finger. And that's a lot of our things and everything that we do simply as human beings. So like my mother used to always tell me, there's no degree of sin. So just because you think that you gossip, or you think that you committed adultery, and that someone else is bigger and badder than you because they did something that you don't agree with, it's just not the truth of the matter. And like Tamara said, we really do need to start cutting those things down and really concentrating on the old school saying, what would Jesus do? Because he will love on them in spite of, because he loves on us in spite of ourselves. So he asks us to give the same grace and mercy that he gives us to give to ourselves first and foremost, and then to each other after that. So I'm gonna get off my high horse and my soapbox, and I'm gonna give it to Federo, and he's gonna go over the next two topics.
All right, we're gonna be wrapping up shortly, ladies, but I appreciate the conversation thus far. The next thing we want to discuss is something that I believe to some degree is definitely affecting our society, but it's ripping into our youth. It's breaking up marriages. It's breaking up families, and that is social media. That is cyberbullying and bullying as a whole. When I think of social media and how it has dramatically impacted family, there are rates or statistics that state that even though money is a primary focus for why people are getting divorced, now social media, cheating, and all of these fantasies that we are concocting in our head from the gram of what we think our wife should be and husband should look like, it is ripping up the fabrics of our families and so forth. But more importantly, it is tearing into the consciousness of our youth. One statistic states that over 60% of students who experience cyberbullying reported that they have suicidal ideations. Cyberbullying is so normal right now that it's hard to think of anybody that hasn't experienced it, especially within a certain age range to some degree. And to think that 60% of the youth, particularly students that have experienced it, it has resulted in them despairing of life. I think that's really, really profound. Another statistic states that 59% of US teens have been bullied or harassed online, and over 90% believe that it is a major problem for people of their age. Nearly 1 in 5 students, 21% exactly, reported that being bullied during the school year, reported being bullied during the school year, impacting over 5 million youth annually. So while cyberbullying and social media pressures and so forth are definitely a portion of the conversation that I want to discuss, I also want to illuminate the fact that bullying can happen in the family. Mama could be a bully, daddy could be a bully, and those, it's important that we identify what bullying really is, and it's important that we identify who the bullies really are, because sometimes we can offer silent approval to people who display bully behaviors, and just because they're louder, more aggressive, more assertive, maybe more popular, we offer our silent approval for that. But if you yourself have been bullied, you know the impact that has held on you. Me personally, I had my share of bullies in school. None of them made me despair of life, but I was also growing up in school where social media wasn't an issue, and the people that were in my class were literally, to some degree, my small little family for that school year. Well, now with social media, there's these cliques, there's this hierarchy of what you look like, if you approve, this, that, and the other. First, it was just, are you cool? Now it's, do you got this? How many likes you got? How many is your face snatched? Is your body this, that, and the other? So, be it that we have a lot of women on the Zoom meeting, I brought this up, I believe, during our women conversation, but one of the things that I've noticed is that particularly with women, and particularly with this issue of social media and body image, there seems to be an erosion of how we are regarding women and how we are teaching them to respect their bodies. What would you ladies say? What do you feel? Number one, let me ask this question. What do you feel about the rise of cyberbullying in regards to physical appearance, as well as the rise of now young ladies, both young and old, despairing of their looks so much that they are committing drastic alterations to their bodies, and including the tucks, and I don't know what they all call, but what do you guys think about that? What do you guys think of the rise of these particular issues, particularly within the woman, and how then do you support a different mindset within your family culture in terms of the parents? For those who have daughters, how do you teach your daughters to overlook the pressures of social media and really learn to respect themselves and so forth? I'm gonna toss this question directly to Tamara Walton and then Danyelle specifically, because I know both of you guys have daughters and have raised daughters who are, have become of age or are coming of age. So how do you address the issue of body image, social media bullying, cyberbullying, and all of these different issues that are arising now as it relates to the youth and family? Tamara.
Um, I particularly think that it is not just only women. I think that men also, I think it's just a people thing right now because women are tummy tucking, but men are taking all types of drinks and everybody wants to be a certain. So I think that it's as a whole of us as a people right now. That it's affecting us as a people. And I think that has everything to do with a bigger agenda in order to change our perception about what really matters in our life and what our life is really about. It's a change of focus. It's a change of mind. Again, I always go back to the way we think, the way we perceive life and the way we perceive things. So I think as whole, I think that if I look at our culture right now, we are us as a Black people, we are on top of everything. We are on top of music. We're on top of sports. We're on top of every face you see. We even in the White House now. So I think that with that being said, I think it's a bigger agenda to try to take our young people in another direction. And that has everything to do with because the body changing, that has everything to do with the sexual agenda. It's the makeup of stopping us to become family, stopping us from become married and have families and be committed to each other and take care of our, so I think the agenda is to keep us separated, to keep us from knowing that we should be faithful, we should have one, and I think it's a bigger agenda. And so what I do with my children is I communicate with them more so, not so because it's here. So one, I have to face the fact that we're dealing with it. I have to face the fact that my daughter thinks she wants to be, she doesn't want to be X out of the crowd of being the it girl, even though that I know that she has the strength to know that she's beautiful inside. I still think that it can be depressing if you're not a part sometimes, especially when you're a young person. Now, we as adults, we know we experience, we're mature, but while they're growing and developing, I think it's good to have a little room to give them what they need, but still give them a little room for decisions, allow them to make decisions that they can look back and say, okay, this was right or wrong, because experience is what grounds us. So I try to infiltrate the bigger picture of what I believe the bigger agenda is. And that is making sure that my daughter understands that she doesn't want to be a part of the agenda. Say you don't want to find a great mate. You don't want to go straight for money, and go straight for I need an education so I can make this amount of money. That's not what happiness is fulfilled. I go back to what makes you happy. What do you like? You don't have to always go get a master's degree to be financially stable. I'm sorry. I got a crying baby again. So I'm gonna pass it with the crying baby and just, I don't want to go too long. I'm gonna pass it to the next person.
It's fine. No, it's okay with the crying baby. That's
no problem. So it's all about family, right?
Yes, ma'am. So we're gonna toss it to Danyelle, but before we do that, so you may have raised a good point, Tamara, that I do want to kind of illustrate. I know I tossed it at the women mainly because we do have women on the call, but to your point, men are struggling with their body image as well. I know a man almost 40 who talking about, yo, I'm trying to get my surgery done, get my six pack in, and this, that, and that. I'm get this taken away, a little bit of it, a little bit. And I said, well, I mean, personally, I never considered it myself, but it made me aware that but I will tell you what I did do when I went to the gym. I looked at that buff dude and I said, I want that. I need to work harder. Let me go drink some protein shake. I was in here yesterday. Because I got an image in my head of somebody that I saw the image, the gym the other day, who chest was bigger, who arms were big. I said, mercy if I could get that. You know, and so I imagine it's the same way when women see other women, you know, with the breasts or with the booty or with, you know, the tummy tuck and this, that, and the other. So to your point, absolutely, we're guilty. We're guilty. But Danyelle, I'm gonna toss it to you, and just to reiterate the question: how do you teach as a parent your child to kind of love and respect themselves and kind of, I guess, ride a different current other than what's popular and what they're telling most girls to do and look like within this particular period of time?
Okay, so not cyberbullying. You
Well,
want
yeah, even with the
about
cyberbullying, I may
the
have
body image?
yeah.
Well, I mean, for me, you know, I definitely struggle with it because I was always smaller. You know, I've always been a very petite woman. Um, a lot of my medication actually made me gain weight. Some of the steroids and things like that. So there was a time where I went from being really small to actually being what people would have considered thick. But that wasn't healthy for me either, you know, because I'm only 4'11". So what was more important to me is my health. I think when it comes to the whole implant thing, my feeling has been I'll get an implant when you get one. You know, I mean, you're going to have to love me for what I'm bringing. That's just that. You know what I mean? Because the bottom line is beauty does fade. You know, and if we're trying to build something that is going to last, I mean, if all you're with me for is, you know, what you see superficially, yeah, I don't really want you anyway, you know, because that's nothing to build on. I do have 2 daughters. My oldest daughter is very thin. Well, both of my children are thin, I would say, but my youngest daughter is a bit more curvaceous, I guess I'll say, than, you know, my oldest. And so just even helping them to appreciate their own bodies and their own composition and not compare one another, or, you know, run your own race. You know, God gave you what you need for what he put you here to do. And your B cups are gonna, you know, make a man just as happy as somebody's D's, you know. And I've personally seen where, you know, men or even women, you know, leave these aesthetically, you know, perfect people for individuals that they would consider not even on their level because they're looking for more. You know, people are looking to connect, people are looking to be accepted. Is going back to, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, I mean, there are some things that we need to be able to live and to function and be healthy and productive members of society. And, you know, the physical stuff, it isn't. I mean, because we see people who are missing limbs and different things like that, who are just as happy, just as productive. And, you know, I guess back to what Tamara was saying, it's your focus. You know, it's about, you know, what you've been exposed to, for one. Because I think a lot of times people chime in on things, giving their opinion on things that they aren't really very knowledgeable of. And I think that's another area where we tend to do a lot of damage, you know, to one another. But I did just want to, if I could, talk about the cyberbullying thing, because my oldest daughter did experience some really horrible cyberbullying, you know, down to the fact that there was a young lady threatening to fight her, got on a school bus, you know, all of that. I'd come home, the police are waiting for me. And because all of that had been on Facebook, you know, I was able to actually show, hey, you know what, this stuff, you know, this was something that was being planned, you know, this, and I even told the school, you know, when I got wind of it. And I think that might have even been what made this young lady even more upset, because I quote unquote snitched, or I told, or whatever. But, you know, the thing about it is, you know, we've seen a lot of those fights, you know, things from the cyber go real wrong, you know, where people ended up dead, you know, over something so meaningless. So I think just even pulling back a bit, I guess, maybe from social media, or being more selective in what you choose to like as far as groups and things like that, because you can kind of control your atmosphere to an extent there too. I don't have lots of friends and followers and things like that on social media, and it's by design, to keep control of my atmosphere.
Thank you. I just looked at the time and realized that we have definitely gone over the target goal, but this has really been a good conversation. So I'm gonna cut off my last couple questions and just say thank you, ladies. Woohoo! This has been amazing. What I do want to end with is just some tips for getting help for anyone that is suicidal, dealing with mental health issues. I know a couple of them have been alluded to in regards to medication. There are medications in terms of antidepressants that are beneficial. I am on an antidepressant that has done, world's wonders for me in regards to just keeping my mood stabilized and so forth. But in addition to that, I want you guys to understand, I want it to be understood across the board as well as for the viewers, that getting help is important. If you are despairing of life, don't sit there and stay in that state and that mindset for long. Talk to someone. Once you realize that is how you're feeling, please do your due diligence with seeking help. Not isolating yourself, not continuing to dwell in the loneliness and the isolation, because it only perpetuates and magnifies the sense of despair. If you know someone that is suicidal or despairing of life, and please encourage them to be, I encourage you to be proactive at being supportive of their needs. And encourage them also to not isolate themselves, because one dark night alone can be all it takes. And I'm just gonna leave it there. Understand also that help is available from a number of different sources, including your family doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, psychotherapists, volunteer organizations, community mental health centers, local hospitals, as well as social agencies similar to the Paint the World Project and so forth. Understand also that there are treatments for depression, including antidepressants, psychotherapy, and often it's usually a combination of those that really provide a solid foundation for assistance. Definitely wouldn't be one to recommend taking the antidepressant without first talking to a therapist to see if you can avoid, the medication, if there are some other tips that you can utilize to get yourself better. Number one, a more holistic, other than like the shrooms and the marijuana that we talked about earlier, a holistic thing, and I think Danyelle mentioned it before, was just meditation. I think Tamara mentioned it as well. Meditation, learning the art of meditation, not the spooky, I can float type stuff, but really learning the art of meditation to control your mind, your emotions, your feelings, yourself, that internal portion. That is critical. So many people are going pop goes the weasel, because the weasel go pop, because they have not learned how to control their internal feelings and emotions as it relates to a lot of the difficulties that we know life throws at us, especially as Black Americans in America. Another technique you can utilize, and I learned this technique during my spell, was tapping. You can look it up on YouTube. I utilize a lot of the YouTube videos, but tapping is where you're focusing on certain points within your body to relieve stress pointers. It's a whole process where it's really simple, but it's very, very therapeutic at first, clearing out physical ailments, mental ailments, emotional ailments, and so forth, where not only are you touching the certain points in your body and tapping on them to release the stress, because we know, like, with what is it where they put the little needles in your body?
Acupuncture. That's what I was going to say.
Exactly. There are certain points in our body where stress builds up, and so tapping targets those areas to release that stress, to allow your brain to think more clearly. But it also is coupled with a verbal therapy with self-affirmation to kind of program your mind against some of the negative thoughts. So I encourage you guys to look up tapping if you haven't already done so. But lastly, and this is probably one of the simplest things to do, is just reach out to someone you trust, someone you love, and just let them know what you're going through, so you don't have to go through it alone. Because again, loneliness and isolation is usually the gateway that leads to suicide. Most people, if you feel like people care about you, usually that's an anchor to say, okay, because I'll be honest, there have been times where I said, I'm ready to go, but I got a sister, I got a family, I got people that care about me. This will affect other people. I can't just be selfish and think about myself. Well, when you don't have those anchors, then it's easier to say, okay, nobody cares. So I would encourage you to connect with someone who cares, one of the organizations, your local facilities. And lastly, we're going to provide several resources in the description of this video on YouTube for anyone that's looking for additional resources and help. And with that said, we're going to be signing off. And I want to thank everyone for joining this discussion. It was amazing. Hopefully, like I said, we're going to be having others, so you're more than welcome to return. And thank you guys for watching. Again, if you are experiencing mental health issues and you have an immediate crisis, I encourage you to contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 for support and assistance from a trained counselor. If your loved one is in immediate danger, please call 911. This has been another episode of Fidel Speaks. We're signing off. Thank you to all my amazing guests, and I'll see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Next week.
Bye.
Bye.